Welcome back to the Gin's Treasure. Today I have something a little special for you guys. You can see there's this cool little shimmer right there. Oh yeah, that's the spot. This is a Merlinite stone. It's very special. Its nickname is the Magician Stone. Its crystal quality is to help generate the manifestation of magic in one's life. And beyond that, I just wanted to show you this. I won't be wrapping this on video for you today, but these are two very, very special stones that someone has commissioned me to wrap for them. It's a nice little specimen of moldavite and then tanzanite. I believe this one is. I'm not so familiar with this one, although I do know that it's a high-end and very powerful stone. And then in addition to the wrap that we're gonna do for the Merlinite today, I also wanted to show you, this is a copper chain. And so right now what it looks like is this. And oftentimes when I do the pendant loophole, the hole is not big enough to fit this entire loop through. So I just want to do a quick tutorial to show you when it's complete how I attach the pendant to the chain. And with that, let's get into it. So today we're gonna do, considering the shape and size of this stone, I think it would just be easiest to do that basic wrap that I do. I'm just eyeballing, let's see, probably only need about a little bit more than a hand's length is what we're gonna start with for the 20 gauge wire here. It might end up being a little bit more than I need, that'll be all right. And then in addition to that 20 gauge wire, I'm gonna peel off some from the spool, this 24 gauge wire, and I actually wrapped a little bit too much. So I'm gonna roll it back just once or twice. And then so this is gonna be about an arm's length of 24 gauge wire. So what I do is I start with the 24 gauge wire by kissing the two tip ends together and then sliding with my fingers all the way down to the middle here. And then from there, I'm just eyeballing more or less what's gonna be the middle of this 20 gauge wire. And I'm gonna latch the 24 gauge wire on the 20 gauge wire just right there in the middle. And then from there, we just start our wind quite slow. You can see how for the first one, there was this gap. I will show you how I fix that or tighten it once I get some momentum going on the one side here. And I just go slow for the start. And then now I'm ready to start wrapping on this side, but before I do, I'm just gonna pinch down on the 20 gauge wire with both thumbs and both index fingers, and then just kind of pushing the wires together like that. That way they are now nice and tight, that gap is closed, and I can continue wrapping. And the idea with this wrap to begin with is to wrap, judging the length of this bottom part, I'm thinking that it will be triangular as it sits, so this will be considered the bottom. And I want to do a length slightly wider on both sides of the length of the base of this stone. So that's what I'm going to go for as I wrap. And sometimes when you see how this naturally kind of curves and these wrap or bend towards each other, sometimes in order to give myself room, I'll do what I call the longhorns, which is where I just bend the wire outwards. And that way my hand has more room to wrap around. And it allows me to actually increase my speed for the wrap as well. And then as I finish out on that side, I'm gonna test, because this is more or less the middle here, so it's equidistant on both sides. And I wanna see, it looks like I have a little bit more to go on each side, so that's what I'll do. And then I'll flip this around, even it out with the other side. Even the length. And then from there, I think we're ready to begin the next step. Let's see, that looks pretty good to me. So what I'll do is shape the wire to kind of mimic the shape of the stone by bending upwards on the tips here, and I can just kind of massage those longhorns if I need to. So here we have, this looks like the stone rests pretty well in there. It's slightly more wide than I need it, but that's all right. From here, what I'm gonna do is pinch with my index and the back side of the 20 gauge wire, my thumb on the front side. And then what I'm gonna do is take the 24 gauge wire and swing it around. And this is where I'll need to reopen those longhorns. I'll swing it around and begin wrapping here. So you'll notice there's a little bit of a gap there. And that gap is in order to compensate for see how the stone is, there's no flat side to the stone. This would be considered the flat side. And you see how it's not flat. So the whole purpose of this space gap is to compensate for the lack of flatness on the width end of the stone. So as I wrap a few on that side, what I'll do is swing this down and kind of tug on that, so that way it doesn't go flat across. It creates kind of an arc. That's kind of a small arc, not as much as I would like. So what I'm gonna do is go for like a bigger gap on this side. And I'm basing that off of the thickness of the quote unquote flat end of the stone. You see how it's it's almost like half an inch or something. I'm not good with my measurements, I'm just eyeballing it. But I know enough to know that I'll need a big space gap here. So that's what I'm doing. And so I'll do a few wraps on this side, and then I'll bring that down as well. So now I have this 24 gauge wire goes across this way, and then it goes across underneath as well. And I'm gonna do the moment of truth to see, unfortunately, that's the space gap was not enough. So I need to actually unwind this portion of it. And since I made that mistake, you can see how the wire got a little shoddy from the wraps. I'm just gonna do my best to use the flat part of the pliers and massage that mistake. Make it as smooth as possible before I begin to reevaluate and see. So that time was about here is where I started. So I'm gonna give myself even more room and go way up here and see, hopefully that even might be too much. Actually, now that I think about it, let's see. Before I get carried away with getting more wrapping in. Yeah, you can see how that's clearly too much. So what I'll do is unwrap it and just go for the middle of where it started, and then that last attempt there. So the middle is about right here, and that's where I'll shoot for on this third attempt here. And that looks good, that looks pretty good. Considering how there's not much of an arc on the bottom side, I had to do a lot of an arc on the top side there. And that way, the stone is fitting very nice. And what I want to do actually is, before I get too many more wraps in, I'm gonna do another one low on the bottom just to really solidify holding the stone in place. So what I'm gonna do is take this 24 gauge wire, swing it around, and do my best to hold the stone in place. Open up the horns a little bit and really pull tight on this next one. Because this one, if this one is so loose, it's important to have at least one tight one going across to really make sure that the stone is secure in place. So after I've got a few wraps on this side, what I'm gonna do is flip this around.
Perfect for each other.
And then swing this other 24 gauge wire, the backside 24 gauge wire, over to the opposite side, and then wrap it in. And now that the stone is about like halfway secure, I can do a few more of these wraps and just head straight towards, almost at the top. I'm gonna stop like right where my fingernail ends there, just before the top end. And then what I'll do next is I'll catch up on the opposite side just to make it symmetrical. So about there is where I'll stop, and then I'll do one more wire going across. But before I do that, what I'll do is wrap this side around so it's at an equal height to this one here. And this, how I'm holding it, with how I'm holding the crystal in place, is I'm using my middle finger as kind of like the back, and then with my thumb and my index finger, I'm really just pinching down pretty tightly. And I find that to be the best grip for holding the stone in place as you wrap. It could be that you find something different that works a little easier for you, but that's just my recommendation, what works for me, and what has continued to work for me over the years. So from here, I'm gonna bend the horns out a little bit closer to where I finish the wrap, and that's just to give me room to work with. Now this stone is a little funky because you can see how it's not like a straight 90-degree edge right there. It's really rounded, so that makes it pretty difficult to work with. However, on the flip side, there is a little bit more of an edge. Oh, maybe not. So you see how as I tighten it, the wire just wants to go up towards the middle there. And if I do that too much, then it's gonna close it out and make the top part sorry about that, got a little bit distracted. So if I pull on this, I want to keep this round and out. In fact, if I were to do this again, I would probably even do the third wire going across closer to the middle than I am at the top there. But I think that it will be okay. So what I'm gonna do is just wrap the rest of this wire until I get to the point where if I fold the wire down on the middle, I'll have the wrap stop right at the tippy top halfway before it goes to the other side, if that makes sense. When I show you, I think it will make sense. So I'll stop there and then do the same thing on the other side as I did with this side. So that way these two 20 gauge wires will cross over each other. And the idea is that the wrapped portion of the 20 gauge wires, they stop perfectly at the cross. So what I mean is, like, when I fold this wire down this way and this wire gets folded down this way, the idea is that these two are kind of lined up more or less. So they're slightly off, but that's okay. What I'm gonna do is take this 24 gauge wire that starts on this 20 gauge wire. I'm gonna bring it around the top of both 20 gauge wires and then tuck it under both 24 gauge wires and then pull it tight. That way it wraps both of the wires together, completing a closed wrap at the top here, at the top of the crystal. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with the other 24 gauge wire and just tuck it. So it ends up looking like this. So both of the 24 gauge wires are used to tie in the 20 gauge wires together. And in fact, there's such a gap that I'm just gonna go ahead and do it once more. So I bring the wire over and then under and then pull it tight. And I wanna make sure that these two stay on the bottom here, and then this wire, the first one is up on the top here. And if I flip it around, it's the reverse. So now this one's on the bottom. And then if I bring it over one more time, I want to make sure that it doesn't cross this one. It stays above this one, but below these two here. So when I pull it tight, make sure that it's aligned and it doesn't cross. And then from there, I'm good to it's like raising the hands, the 20 gauge wires. And I always measure by 2 digits of the 3 digits of my index finger. And so right about there is where I'm gonna clip this and maybe save that excess for like an earring or something later. And then from there, I pinch down on the flat part of my pliers and just bend a 90-degree angle. And then with the rounded finger part of the pliers, I'll pinch down right at that 90-degree angle and bend the opposite direction. And then I'll just keep on rolling all the way down until it gets to the top of the crystal pendant. Just like that. And what I try to do is make sure that the tail is pointed downwards towards the crystal, because this 20 gauge wire is a little bit longer than I'd like as well. So I'm just gonna clip off a little bit of excess. And then with the rest of it, what I'm gonna do is it kind of looks like a capital Q, right? Only the tail is on the reverse side. Normally Q would be on that side, Q tail. But either way, I'm gonna take the other 24 gauge wire and just wrap it around the loop, kind of like the neck. And as I continue to wrap, I continue to wrap downwards towards the body of the pendant. And then when I get to the end here, I just take the tip and just curl it inwards so it kind of latches on. And if there's a little bit of excess, you can just tuck it under. Let's see, so you see how it tucks under all this wrap here. And then for this one, this was the Q-tail tip, and that's gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna curl it and then tuck it underneath all the wrap. Finally, we have the 24 gauge wires, which we're gonna do just the same thing where we twist around the neck, kind of like a scarf or something. And then we start from the top and then work our way down towards the crystal. And then you can see one tip ended right there. And for that one, I'll do just the same thing where I curl it and then tuck it under the wrap. So that way there's no pokey tips poking out. And then for this one, I'll do the same thing. Just keep on wrapping around. Until I get to the end there. And take the tip and just curl it under the pendant, under the wrap. So here's what I mean about the adding the crystal necklace. The copper necklace portion is that these loops, they're big enough to put maybe a leather thread through. However, if I were to just take this copper and try to poke it through, it's just not big enough. So what I do is, if you look closely, each of these, there's a break. And what I'll do is, with the flat part of the pliers, I'll clamp down right next to the break and just twist it so that it's open just enough to take the chain off of the loop. And then I'll drop the chain through and then reattach the chain back onto this loop here. And I'm gonna set that down for a second because what I'm seeing is something irregular where, do you see the tip end of there? It must have broken off or something. So I want to try to get rid of that, if I can. If not, I might just leave it because it's not going to be, as long as it's not in the way. Alright, before I spend too much time on this, I'm just going to continue with the tutorial. Normally the chains won't have something like that. So what I'll do is just carefully, with the next chain up, is reattach it. I decided to just take my time off the camera and get that little awkward part, broken part off. Okay, so now you can see the very end loop is nice and neat and a lot more easy for me to just reattach. go. And then from there, I'm just gonna, once again, use the flat part to bring this loop back closed, right? And then from there, you can just attach it just like how you normally would, the lobster claw. Boom.